lock in his next chief of staff, and he's got impeachment on his mind. One source telling CNN that the president is now interested in David Bossi's impeachment experience as he searches for a new chief of staff. Could his former deputy campaign manager get the gig as a result of that experience?
Maybe. With us now, CNN political commentator, former Hillary Clinton presidential campaign manager, Patty Solis Doyle, and CNN political commentator and former Ted Cruz communications director, Alice Stewart. Good morning, ladies. Nice to have you. And Alice, let me just begin with you. Given the mind frame of the president as it comes to impeachment, as we know, Democrats will take control of the House in a matter of days come January. David Bossie, political. He knows how to deal with impeachment proceedings. Very different skill set than John Kelly. Smart pick for the president if it is him?
I think so, because look, with the chief of staff moving forward into 2020 needs to be different than the one moving into the White House when the president first got there. He needs to be strategic, he needs to be political, he needs to be able to handle the investigative side of this, which is what he has experience to do, and he needs to marry that with strategic communications going into 2020. And with his political experience, working in the past on various issues and campaigns, I think there's tremendous names on the list for chief of staff, but David Bossie checks all those boxes, in my view, of the perfect person, not only that can fill the role necessary, but someone that gets along with this president as well as the current staff, and he has that built-in relationship. So I think all the great names we have on the list, I see him as someone right at the top right now.
Patty Solis Doyle, I wonder if that is an indicator that the focus for this president, perhaps by necessity, in the second half of his term is going to be on defense like this, rather than, and again, there are other handicaps in the way, one being the Democrats now control Congress, makes it, of course, more difficult to push through legislation. In your view, is that going to be the driving force in these last 2 years?
I think so, Jim. This is a very, very difficult terrain for the president right now. He's already been implicated in crimes from the Southern District of New York. We have the Mueller probe that is ongoing, but all signs seem to point to coming near its end with a probably very difficult report for the president. We've got a Democratic-led House in Congress with all sorts of subpoena power, and more importantly, though, a much more better hand to play in terms of legislating. So he's going to have a lot of difficult fights with Congress. And we have a president with a very, very low approval rating. And so, yes, whoever the chief of staff is going to be, they are going to be playing defense from day one, as soon as they take the job.
Alice, you're aware of the developments with Michael Cohen. The line coming now, not just from the president, but from a string of Republican senators in defense of the president, is basically that Michael Cohen is a liar on this. And of course, they changed their tune because earlier this year, they were saying he was an honest man who would tell his story correctly. But I want to play what the president has said about those payments to the women during the campaign and the final months of the campaign and ask you about it. Have a listen.
Did you know about the payments?
Later on, I knew. Later on. But you have to understand, Ainsley, what he did, and they weren't taken out of campaign finance. That's a big thing. That's a much bigger thing. Did they come out of the campaign? They didn't come out of the campaign. They came from me.
So the president, of course, prior to that admission, had said he knew nothing about the payments. Right. So why is the president's word more trustworthy here? He has an interest in this than Michael Cohen. I mean, if that statement he just said is true, then his prior statements were lies.
Well, sadly, Jim, neither one of them, in my view, are very truthful with regard to this matter, because there's not just the political aspect of this, but there's the personal aspect of this for the president. And with all this talk about what to do moving forward with the president, look, this Mueller investigation, this probe started off with really serious concerns about whether or not this administration colluded with Russia to influence the election. We're truly not seeing that. It's important to have a wait and see mode with regard to this. And what we're seeing out of Cohen is clearly, in my view, nothing more than a payoff to a porn star and a playmate to cover up an affair. And in my view, that's not grounds for impeachment. That's grounds for divorce. And I'm saying I'm a communications expert. I'm not a marriage counselor, but moving forward, I don't see from a political standpoint that's anything more than a personal matter that the president needs to deal with.
Point of fact, Michael Cohen also testified about Russian Trump campaign discussions of a business deal in Moscow as well. So it wasn't purely confined to the marriage, but just point of fact there.
Let me ask you, Patty, just jumping back to the chief of staff conversation here, because a former tweet of the president's has been brought up a lot now, having to do with chiefs of staff. He wrote back in 2012, 3 chiefs of staff in less than 3 years of being president, part of the reason why Barack Obama can't manage to pass his agenda. The irony is priceless. Okay, I get that, right? There's a tweet for everything. But this would be Trump's 3rd chief of staff in 2 years, but President Obama over his years had 5, George W. Bush had 2, Bill Clinton had 4, and those are over more years. Yes, I understand that, but is it so abnormal here?
Look, the turnover rate for this particular administration, the Trump administration, is like 63%, and yeah, that is abnormal when you.
So you
compare
think it's part of the bigger picture issue here, not just that this will be a 3rd chief of staff?
I think that the president of the United States, Donald Trump, does what he wants, says what he wants, whenever he wants, and he will not be managed. And so I think it puts whoever the chief of staff is in a very, very difficult position. One that is not only unpleasant, but very humiliating in times. And we've seen that with Reince Priebus, and we've seen it with John Kelly. I think, save for Nikki Haley, it is hard to find someone who's left this administration without their reputation and integrity intact. And so I think it is going to be very difficult for the president to find someone who is, not only willing to take on a Democratic-led House and a Mueller probe and partisanship, but to take on, losing the reputation.
Thank you both for being here. Patty, nice to have you as always, and Alice, we'll have you back soon. All right, a very important new climate change report. There have been a number of them lately, and they're all very important, even if some in Washington try to dismiss them. Talking about human-caused climate change causing unparalleled warmth in the Arctic. This, as a Trump advisor, is laughed at during a climate change conference overseas this week.